Join us in a few minutes as we go over all of the clues for The Alienist Episode 3.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I like this ambient music. I like how I always say join us.
It's like cute, the lights go on.
I know. I always say join us in a few minutes, and the advertisement for AfterBuzz is like 2 seconds.
Yeah, join us in 2 seconds.
I have no concept of time. I'm 123 Jackie B. You can catch me 123 Jackie B on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, except for Snapchat, where I'm Jackie B123 because boo Snapchat. And
you know, I actually love Snapchat. They have like the best filters. Hey guys, I'm not gonna tell you my Snapchat, but you can find me on Instagram at Miss Candi Marie and also on Twitter at Sweet Kindora TV.
Hey guys, I'm Alice Ford. You can find me on Twitter at Alice L. Ford or on Instagram at Alice's Adventures on Earth. And I'm really excited about this episode because there's like so many little tidbits we got, so I'm
this
excited.
Is so random, but I love the name of your blog because it's like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but you're on Earth.
So dope.
Thank you.
So dope.
It is.
And yes, all of the small clues. We are loving this episode. I am Takira Shabrae, and you can catch me on Instagram and newly to Twitter at Takira_Shabrae.
So give her a follow, you guys. She's new to Twitter. Show her some love.
I know, right? I'm working on it.
So we have something special for you. We have 4 books of The Alienist. The cover art is from the TV series to give away, and we'll draw a winner from an old-timey hat. And
That's right.
We'll draw a winner from
I
an
have some
old
old-timey hats, so I'm going to bring them in for when we draw the winner.
I remembered
So.
you saying that, so I was volunteering your old-timey hat.
Right.
She's like, oh, we do? Oh, yeah.
I have some. I have like a beaver skin top hat from like
Ooh.
1910 or something. So definitely bring.
So
it
there you go. We'll draw your name from an old-timey hat in the 5th episode. We're on episode 3 right now. So that gives you 2 episodes-ish to comment on iTunes or YouTube. If you've already commented on our shows, you've entered the comment portion, but then you have to follow each of us on Instagram and Twitter as well.
And AfterBuzz.
And AfterBuzz.
Yes,
as well.
and while we're at it, you know, chat with us under our videos
Yes.
and you know, share your favorite parts of our shows as well.
Yes, so we have a new death in this episode. A new dawn, a new death. I don't know. Did they actually give us the name of the child who was murdered in this episode?
No,
I don't think
not
they did.
yet.
Not yet.
So we have another child prostitute who was dressed like a girl. Same murder on a high place on a roof. Same thing with the missing of the eyeballs. We got glimpses of the body, so I couldn't tell if it was the same like gash marks, but it looked like it.
Yeah, it was like some upper.
Yes,
It
and
looks
we
like way
going
more
on.
blood.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
a little bit more. And okay, I don't love, but I guess I do love that we called it when we said heights. All
Yes!
day. We mentioned on our first episode,
Yes,
we
we
said this
did.
guy has something to do. He has some factuation with heights. So it's like all coming together.
This is coming from people. I haven't even read the book, so my book reading is matched up with the episodes. So none of us had read the book far enough to know that was a thing.
No, not
So.
at all.
We're just
Come
we're just
here
giving
for
it.
Spoilers.
advanced knowledge.
I feel like an investigator.
I think they should put us in the next season. Just
I've never-
put us in there.
Yes.
You know, just
I
write
wear
us
those
in.
broad shoulders. Find a couple of killers.
Right. I mean, it's actually kind of fashionable.
Right.
Hey.
Speaking
So-
of like,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. I have at it.
I just wanted to get a little bit with this new death. We also see more of the police clash between Connor and Roosevelt, and who I like to call Old Chief Bane, because that's what his voice sounds like.
Yes.
It's like, hello, I'm the
Right.
police chief. That was a terrible Bane impression. Steve can do one.
Steve, where are you, Steve?
He doesn't care.
Oh,
He tuned
come
out.
on.
You don't request the Bane impersonation.
That is it.
There we go. There we
Only
go.
in London in 1947.
But
Oh
this
my
is New
God.
York.
I don't know what year it is or where it is.
Yes,
Sorry,
it's
guys.
definitely New York.
But yeah, the whole clash of the police. you kind of see Teddy Roosevelt like step up a little bit and kind of take charge of, okay, who's going to get the upper hand here. So he's obviously trusting in Dr. Chrysler and Sarah and John and the Isaacson brothers. He's counting on them, almost counting on them to kind of find more, because I think he kind of knows and realizes the whole police corruption thing going on. So
yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I mean, there's definitely corruption. We saw that in the opening scene where the old police chief was sitting in with that family. He said it's Van Bergen's son that's being accused, Willem.
Right.
So, okay, so they know there's something going on. This guy, Willem. First of all, your name is Willem, okay? That's kind of creepy right there.
Same name as a famous drag queen. I just want to point that out.
Well, alrighty.
Yeah.
No relation.
Okay, wow. Okay, there's some type of connection there.
I don't know if they picked it because they were a fan or what. No, the book was written in 1995.
Right, so we see that there's a connection there. So whoever this family is, the police chief, he knows them well. He sat down with them. He said, look, you got to get your son, because your son, you know, the word's getting out that your son is doing this.
And the father was so unbothered. Like, sitting there in the right. And it's like, that really bothered me. And it signs that this has been going on for some time now. And no one's really doing anything.
I think part of it, too, is the parents, it seems like they're insinuating that because their son went to the boys dressed as girls brothel, Persis Hall. Persis Hall. I have pronunciation problems. It seems like they are shunning his lifestyle, and so they're trying, like, as much as this is probably their only kid, and as much as they want to be like, oh, this is my son, I love him, they're fighting that whole, well, like, we have to stand by our son because he's our son and we love him, but we also are, like, extremely distasteful of, like, everything he does.
Well, I don't think in the last episode we ever heard anything about this character, right?
No.
So, like, the beginning of the episode just kind of opened with that, and then it was just kind of never talked about again. So I don't really know, like, where... Is this like something that police are doing to try and like deflect, or?
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because I think that's why we're starting to see the police chief. I think that's why he's starting to become more and more active, because I think he's trying to low key put a handle on this situation by having his hand in the mix. And I think that that was a group of journalists when they were outside of the building, and they were saying, we're starting to see more of you, like you're starting to come around more, only because he really knows what he's the only one that knows what's really going on, and he's not saying anything, which makes him a part of the problem too.
And if everyone else is seeing a pattern, I mean, the reporter, the journalist, like he mentioned, he said when he was talking to Teddy Roosevelt, he was like, are you starting to see a pattern here? Do we have a pattern? Duh, like, obviously everyone else sees it. Yes. And the chief, the captain, I mean, what's going on?
But now we know who is paying the captain.
Right.
It's the police chief, because the police chief has the connection with the family.
And I do like that it's this kind of, they've set up this dichotomy, not just between like corrupt old world order, but literally corrupt older people versus younger people. You know, you had that comment early on in the episode where he's like, oh, you have these, I don't know, he used some terrible term, but it was like basically young whippersnappers, and you're giving them awards and everything, because these are the people that Teddy's trying to pull into the force, because he knows that they're young and uncorrupt, and so those are the only people that he can trust.
Which
out
is
with
smart.
the old and in with the new.
And it worked because they tipped him off.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how the journalists got there before the other guys, but
it's just all corrupt. Everybody has
you probably
an
have, and it's like they know more because Moore is also a journalist. Well, to some level, I mean, in this incarnation, he's an illustrator, but so they probably know his whereabouts or are following him around, and know enough people to ask where to find him.
And word travels fast. You know, there really isn't any type of discretion. I mean, they talk openly and freely in these rooms. They don't look around to see who's in there. So I'm pretty sure there's always somebody that's just close enough to hear what's going on.
I do like, though, that Chrysler mentioned that they're setting up a private location where they can all meet rather than a public dining space.
About time.
Delmonico's.
Delmonico's, like, you know, that restaurant is still open. Like,
It's a real restaurant.
I mean,
in New York.
it's a real restaurant in New York. They were serving their signature drink, like, for the premiere of the show, which I thought that was kind of cool. So if you're in New York, can't speak today, then snap a picture of yourself at Delmonico's and Tag us on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting.
I think we're all just kind of speechless, you know,
Right.
as to what this episode left in
There's
our
so
minds.
much information.
There's so much going on.
So many
Which
things.
brings us to hashtag It Means Something, our It Means Something segment.
Yeah.
There was so much information. I think we all have maybe more than one thing that we thought, oh my gosh, this is another thing to add. This is another piece of the clue to add to our arsenal.
Right. Yeah.
So take us off and let us know what yours was.
Absolutely. So if this is your first time joining us here at AfterBuzz TV, we have a segment called hashtag It Means Something, where we talk about all the small details that normal people may have missed, but the investigator and you and I picked up on it. So if you have one, we are going live. Feel free to add your comment. My hashtag It Means Something was the reflection of Sarah, the younger self. Looking at her younger self in the mirror. This was obviously moments after Dr. Chrysler kind of accused them of not being able to cope with who they really are and the issues that they face. And I think that kind of set something off in her. I think, obviously her father committing suicide at a younger age and her mother losing her mother at a younger age. I think that might be, her telling herself that that's where she needs to dig to truly find herself. So yeah, Sarah looking in the mirror and seeing her younger self. I think it's something that we're going to have to see
That
her
was all a
battle
moment we
with.
took back. We were taken aback too, because usually this series focuses on the literal, like literal clues. We're ensconced in the time period. As we get later, I have some info on the costume designer, but he even says there are shows that'll take liberties with the costumes, but he went very literally, like this would come from this time period, this is what you wear. So for us, having that one element of like imagination or fantasism that wasn't related to like being drugged or something like that was like shocking. So it had to,
Yeah.
I agree, it has to mean something.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I have so many things written down here. I was like, what does that
Spill it,
mean?
girl.
Is that some sort of tip? Well, first is the man in the hot tub. I think I was like, oh wait, obviously to me that was the killer. But then that whole scene just seemed a little bit just like out of place to me. They show all these kids in the hot tub.
Boys.
Or spring, I don't know what they called it back then. And then obviously a man who's just sitting there kind of taking it all in and really enjoying the scene.
I wonder if that is a public bath.
Probably, yeah. That's
And
the word I was looking for.
yeah, and I wonder if that is like where the killer is also looking for guys, trolling for guys, basically, because we know he's going to Priestess Hall. We know he's going there, but this could be another place because not all of the kids that have been murdered have been from there. So.
Right.
And you see I don't know if this is like a kind of a off of your ending something, but the mole on his lip. Don't know if anybody else caught that. Again, a very detailed. So now every character that we see, I'm looking for a mole on the lip.
He has silver teeth and a mole.
mole
The
on
details, the little details.
The little details,
And
yeah.
the mole
he
was
looks
created because his teeth were so jacked up.
right. But he's young too. I mean, we see the back of him, and like you said, he's just kind of sitting there chilling. And you look in the background, you see hats that obviously look like policemen. Obviously, they see this random person who is sitting in the hot spring. So if the rest of the boys are young, he obviously has to be young because he's not standing out. And if he is standing out, why aren't they saying anything? Like that whole scene.
It's
I'm
someone
so glad
they
you brought it
trust,
up.
though.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like
He blends in very well.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna add to the killer. My It Means Something is he was wearing gloves. I don't know if you guys saw, but I am of the belief that he was the one that was underneath which I mean
underneath the stairs.
Yes,
anything?
when they left and the body was found and the person who found the wallet, if you look closely, he had on a pair of gloves. So to me, that implies that maybe he's a climber. And we know that he likes heights, so maybe that's how he gets up and down. He's a climber, and I saw those gloves, so that's something that we should definitely look out for. So I think that it means something, so let's pay attention to that. Also, I want to point out that Madeline, hey girl,
Hey, Madeline.
Madeline Paletti, she said said that the police chief is taking bribes from the brothel owner. So I think that's one of the things that I see in the chat. Maybe that means something to Madeline.
Obviously,
So let's keep that in mind. But back to the glove.
The thing about
There was
the
a
gloves,
leather black glove.
Because I agree with you that that's the killer, the guy hiding with the gloves
right.
under the stairs, you know. But it's weird to me because he's leaving fingerprints. So what are you doing? Your leg's hanging off the gloves.
The gloves were they actually have the fingerprints out. So they're the ones that
see, I didn't
motorcycle
see
riders wear. I mean, well, I don't know. You know the ones
No,
that
those are actually rock climbing gloves.
Oh.
yes,
Yeah,
they're climbing.
They're for like going on ropes and like sliding down the rope like that, so that you don't get rope burn on your hand, but your fingers are out, so you can still get the traction.
And we brought that up last episode,
Yeah.
the whole like rock climbing and all of that. And I noticed when he was up kind of in the ceiling, like hiding, he was gripping the wood. He didn't have gloves on. It was just like bare, bloodied. So that's a
Yeah, I
really
noticed
good
that too.
point.
And also, that also shows that he is, again, very wealthy. We saw his parents, but I mean, I don't know any poor people that can afford leather gloves to climb. I
Not
mean,
leather,
you're just going to have some messed up, hands.
socks.
Exactly. So, again,
Interesting.
he's very wealthy. We've met his parents.
Or well, maybe.
Maybe,
if
yeah,
it's Willett.
maybe. If it's
Right,
Willem,
right.
we're still finding
Willem.
it
Yeah.
Sounds like a climber to me.
out. Right.
Willem the climber.
Willem the climber.
The other thing about that scene that was interesting to me is that they're saying, okay, how did he get in here? Because it's this high and the doors are locked. So like when you saw the outside of the building, there's nothing to me on the outside of that building that would even be able to climb. So I'm like, what if he had a key as well, like his own key to that?
Well, Madeline, she's so you're such an alienist,
You go,
Madeline. We just
Madeline.
love
Go, Madeline.
you. She said yes. The killer also has climbing shoes.
Excellent.
Oh, good.
So he has
good
gloves
job
and
picking
shoes,
that up.
and then wood. You can gain traction on wood. So it makes sense. Everything built back then was made out of wood.
Yeah, and there was like rafters. It would
That
be
is
really
such
easy
a
to
good
get.
point.
And you know
Up
what?
the building,
I'm
up
sure
the
you would
ceiling.
know about that misadventure,
Right.
Alice's adventures.
Adventures World.
I've climbed a few rafters back in the day.
Wait, hold on a
farmhouse.
second. Where you like time travel? I don't know.
No, just I
Could
grew
be
up in
female.
I grew up in this like out in the middle of nowhere, and we had a lot of farmhouses that were like near where I lived, and so my friends and I in elementary school would go and climb in the rafters and like walk around.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
That's awesome. So we've got a lot of clues, guys.
Yeah, right.
So I have another thing, and this is like a book clue moment. When at the beginning, when Sarah's talking with who I assume is Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, and she says, our fathers used to be friends, and the girl asked her if she knows how to shoot, and she said, yes, my father taught me. And in the books, her father taught her how to shoot because they would go hunting, and her mother died at a young age, so it was like a bonding experience, and he didn't, like, she was the only company he had, so
Wow.
that's what he had to do. And so I feel like that when you're making a detail like that, I feel like that has to come into play later, like something's gonna
Absolutely.
happen and she's gonna have to use a gun, and
Absolutely.
everybody's gonna be like, girl, you used that gun, that was so awesome.
Right? You go, girl.
What a shot!
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
And her father, like, teaching her kind of at a young age, I can't help it, but when I think of that, I think of Mary. We had a conversation about Mary last time, digging deep into her character, catching your father on fire. I mean, that blows my mind.
There is so much depth to her character.
And she hasn't even said a word. I mean,
Well, can we talk about how Chrysler has an obsession with, or has an obsession with saving people that are murderers?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Because
the thing,
Mary-
I do want to give Mary
Cyrus.
some context, though, because in the books it's explained that she has some sort of mental verbal problem, that she has an intact mind, but she has a hard time, like, speaking and formulating her thoughts, like, out loud. And so that's why she's silent, because she has a hard time talking. So I think that puts her in context better, because otherwise you're just like, why is she not saying anything all the time?
I don't know. I mean, after catching your father on fire, and John said she tried multiple, like, it took multiple attempts to light the flame. It kind of makes me and not to take our defense or anything, we don't know yet, but it kind of makes me think, like, what kind of pain did you have to go through in order to do something like that?
Well,
go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will say this. I think that there is a commonality between the majority of these characters. I don't think that anyone knows how to properly express their emotions. And even Dr. Chrysler. You know, he actually has some affection for Mary, and he doesn't know how to properly express that when he yelled at her. Even when he walked into the room and she felt his presence, she didn't see him, but she knew he was there, and she had that small smile. You know, nobody knows how to express themselves, even though he's this doctor of psychology and that studies the brain and why people do these things. He can't even properly express himself. So I think that that is also a part of his obsession. He wants to know, like, when the conversation that he had with, was it...
Cyrus?
Yes.
Cyrus,
The conversation that he had with Cyrus. That was such an interesting conversation. And even the conversation that he had with Sarah and John, he really wants to understand why people do what they do. Like I feel like we're going to find out something about him. Also, there's a dark part of his past.
Yes.
Well, maybe he's done something, and maybe he's trying to understand why he did it.
And that was my question. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
go
I
ahead.
just want to say one of the quotes that Sarah said was why rather than the what. We're figuring out the why rather than the what.
And that was my question, because he's so passionate about figuring out what other people's, what he said, opioid is, like what's your drug, what's your thing. I want to know what his thing is. Like, we still haven't known. So he's asking, you know, John Moore, what do you do when your father doesn't approve? Or, you know, when you lost your brother? Or Sarah, what did you... Like, he's asking all of these questions. What's yours?
He's a great deflector. He's a deflector.
Oh, definitely. And he's super dark, because the moments when he asks John Moore in the very first episode what he saw on the little boy on the roof, down to Cyrus when he was giving descriptions about him killing whomever it is that he killed, it was almost like this, like, bloodthirsty, like some type of energy,
a craving.
A craving. It was a little disturbing, and so I mean, in a good way, it kept us, you know, intrigued.
They're all weird. Everybody's weird.
We like it.
The article, you know, Alice sent us this article. That was you sent this article. Sorry, we're on a chat. We're on like a chat thing, and sometimes I forget
like
who sends what.
up.
Yeah. So there was an article. I forget where it was from.
I think The Insider.
Yes, The Insider. With it was an interview with Luke Evans, and he says everybody on the team is alienated in their own way, which I like that. It's like a team of outsiders, and they each have their own reason why they're like an isolated personality, and why they might not fit into the like natural social mold.
Right.
And it's about overcoming that and coming together.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It makes them also great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why they come together.
And I think they're going to become more alienated as the episodes go on, because one of the other things that Sarah said in this episode, which I think also Moore said to Chrysler, was, we'll see how you are when you would like to be alone. So I think he's going to alienate himself even more, so, which I think we saw a little bit of in this episode, because he's just getting he's kind of ticking everybody off so much that everyone's like, we don't want to talk to you anymore because you're really being an a-hole.
Yeah, and not just being an a-hole, he has a connection, such a close connection with the killer. It's almost like okay, the picture that was on the wall, was that Dr. Chrysler? I mean, we see a guy who has a drink, there's a drawing on the wall, and the guy, which maybe we're being led to believe is the killer. I don't really think so. I'm not buying it. But he kind of gives like homage to the picture on the wall. Was that Dr. Chrysler?
No, that was Moore, and that was his brother.
The drawing on the wall
Was Moore's brother. Well, that's what I thought anyways. When he does the cheers.
I don't know if we've seen it yet. Maybe I'm missing something.
I definitely think it's a loved one. I thought that maybe it's his father.
Right, okay.
I don't know. Definitely a loved one or a relative or something.
Right. I think that's another hashtag, it means something. That, I mean, like we said, we had a lot, but that was really deep.
And I'm glad you said that, because Jordan Bryan, thank you for joining us this week. He said, how do you guys think the killer is going to react to knowing that there is a group of people on his tail and starting to understand him.
Oh, I think he loves it.
He loves it.
One of the things that, you have Chrysler saying he's evolved, and then you have the killer literally waiting around after these scenes, like when in I think it was the first episode when he gave Chrysler the tongue, and then Chrysler goes after him, but he's like just there. And then in this scene where he's waiting around with the victim to like listen to what they're saying, he's obsessed knowing that they're following him.
He loves it. He's getting off on it. If anything, it's making him stronger. It's making him more passionate. Like it's almost like a good and bad thing. Like you want to figure out who it is, but if he knows that he's coming for it, he's going to kill more children just to kind of play this game. I mean, it's so it's.
He's definitely getting off. If you ask me, I think he was getting off on that photo at the very end of the episode.
We did have the Chrysler referring to the Psychosis Sexualist book, where it seems like he has like a sexual obsession, but at the same time, I think he has a fame obsession. It's like he was hiding his kills at first, and now he's making them more open.
It's something definitely sexual. Like to speak on that book, it's funny that obviously Dr. Chrysler has read the book, and he's encouraging John to read the book. Like, hey, maybe you can understand, like kind of bringing him to the dark side a little bit, which we all know John struggles with anyway. But in regards to the book, the first edition of that book was in 1886, so roughly like 10 years prior to. And it's one of the first books that talks about, or that doctors can reference about sexual behavior. And it actually comes, I kind of want to mention this, it talks about 4 different types of mental states with sex crimes, like pretty much the why behind the what that Dr. Chrysler is so obsessed with. But it talks about 4 different state of minds. It has one, a sexual desire at the wrong time of life, so maybe referencing age. The next one is insufficient sexual desire, and then excessive sexual desire, and then just the misdirected sexual, so things like homosexuality, bisexual, any kind of fetish that you might have, like kind of like a redirected that's outside of the norm. So that whole book kind of talks about that, and the fact that it's kind of like handed off. It's kind of a really big clue in this. So
wow.
It's really deep.
Because back then, a lot of those people were misunderstood.
Right.
Like those boys. And I mean, anything outside of, like you said, the norm, it was just so deviant.
Right.
So like, I'm pretty sure that like his parents probably didn't understand him. He just grew up being alone. So that's probably how he developed this fetish.
Right, exactly.
Well, and I think, they talk a little bit in this episode also about kind of the things the traits of the killer. And I think obviously we know that he likes heights now. He likes maybe water. And I think one of the other things that he really likes is just, he likes to feel like people like love him back. Like, because all these boys, like, one of the things they keep talking about is that they all feel so comfortable with him. So obviously he really loves that, like,
he's literally
attention.
ingesting them.
Yeah, that he gets and that he can give and be like, oh, I'm giving you
such strong points.
But why kill them?
Because they're vulnerable. He gets them to the point where they're so vulnerable and they trust him, and then he completely takes their innocence.
Yeah,
their eyes, their ability to see, their ability to taste. Those are those are senses that a lot of people don't take for granted. Like, how would you feel if you weren't able to see and to taste? And
that's true.
Well, and I think if we just look at psychopaths or murderers, I think most of the time, even with crime, you're more likely to be the victim of a crime by someone that you know. And I think even other famous movies like Hannibal, or he befriends her to the point where she actually stops believing that he is a murderer.
Yes.
So that he doesn't feel bad for what he's doing.
And then he's able to turn the tables because now she trusts him. Yeah. So I think this guy also has a few of those same traits.
Listen, we're your alienist guys,
right.
okay?
We are all the way.
Right.
Moving a little bit away from the murders, I would like to talk about something a little more, a little less gruesome, which is the love quadrangle angles. I sensed something between Mary and Chrysler, and it looked like they might kiss in the next episode.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's a sexual tension going on between Sarah and Chrysler. I think that scene where she's like, oh, you like to be alone. And he's like, oh, you're dressed for going out. There was a lot of like innuendo there where there was like, I mean, she's basically asking him, do you really want to be alone? Because I'll be here with you. And then he's saying, are you dressed to go out? Because I would rather have you be here.
Right. He's like, because you look mighty good right now.
Yeah. And then more kisses Sarah in the car. So you have all these very complicated relationships.
It was so awkward.
But she's just so not there. She's just,
I know.
She's just not.
She was like, and I'm turning off.
Right. She was just like, hashtag unbothered. But she says at the party, which was a little strange, the Vassar reunion that she mentioned with her friend, and they were weirdly like trying to find a killer that winked at them. How weird is that?
I love the juxtaposition though of like having a murder as a party game where everyone's like, isn't this fabulous?
Right.
And then there's a real scary murder happening in the city.
As they say, yeah. But she says, her friend is like, oh, well, maybe you do have a beau, or, I think, like the old school beau. And she said he's a doctor. That's...
I would think she was just describing Chrysler.
Right?
Like, I think that's what was in her head.
Absolutely.
Right.
We kind of saw this coming. We predicted this in our very first episode.
They did. That's true.
I don't want this though. I don't want it.
No, I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I like the Sarah. I'm a Sarah. If we're shipping on a murder show, I do this on every show I'm on. It could have nothing to do with that, and I'm like, I ship that taco and that burrito.
Oh my gosh.
So I definitely ship Chrysler and Sarah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think that's because I have a crush on Chrysler myself, and that I find Sarah so fascinating.
You know what? I find Sarah fascinating, but for some reason, even though I just want John, John annoys me, and, I want him to pull it together. I feel like they're going to, I kind of want them, to do whatever.
Old friends.
Yeah, but I feel like Chrysler and Mary. I don't know why, but I'm like,
see, but Mary
it's so deep.
Mary's
There's something
very murdery right now.
But Chrysler, I think that would low key turn him on.
I think
like
that's
set me
what
on fire, Mary.
Right. I think that's what he likes.
Well, that scene where, like, after they had the little kind of, like, skiff, and then she's in the kitchen, like, with the knives, and then he, like, comes in, and it's all like, ooh, is she gonna do something? Or,
right.
He's like, take my shirt. She's like, I have a knife.
Right.
And then it just was like, never mind.
And that so-called shirt, speaking of the whole...
Oh, he got so
mad. He got really upset, but the fact that Cyrus was like, Doctor, you have blood on your shirt. He's like, oh, it's ink. Clearly, we know that it's not ink. And Cyrus, the fact that he knows that it is not... I mean, Cyrus has seen blood. That's kind of like...
He's killed someone.
Right. Are they thinking... is this like the moment that we've been waiting for? Like, they've always known, Cyrus and Stevie and Mary have always known that Dr. Chrysler is kind of dark, and it's like they kind of expect it.
It's like, who are you trying to fool? Like,
right.
It's like he won't, like, remove the mask.
Right. We'll figure out, I think, next episode.
Do you guys think he killed somebody?
Cyrus?
No,
Dr. Chrysler.
I was like, we know he did.
I don't think so. I don't think so
either. I think he wants Cyrus, because he was like the savior of Cyrus and Mary. Like I'm assuming he testified for Mary as well, and that's why she's there too. Right. He saved them, and he probably wants to be seen in a certain way. I mean, we talked before coming in here about how he got so mad at Mary for being in the room and like ousted her.
Right.
And Sarah mentions that it's because he doesn't want her to see him have emotions. So he probably is lying to Cyrus, even though they both know it's a lie, just to try and make Cyrus see him in a certain way, or fool himself into thinking, Cyrus sees me this way, I have to be this way.
That's a good point too. Yeah. That's a good point.
That is a good point.
Yeah. Josh T also made a really good point. He said, it was mentioned that the boy was strangled. I'm wondering, does he strangle his victims to death before he dismembers them? Does he destroy their bodies as fun for the police to find? That is true. He does strangle them.
Interesting.
That
That's
sounds
really
like
good
a sexual
point.
thing too.
That is.
I mean,
But
this is all sexually charged. I mean, like we said before. I mean, that's a really good point. He likes the chase and the fact that he's leaving these clues and everything like that. That's a really good point.
But does it also mean that he shows empathy towards them as well, so that they don't have to feel that
feel the pain of the
to
cut?
really feel the pain, you know?
That's kind of
Because he does develop these relationships, so I assume that he also has developed some type of feelings for them to a certain extent, because he visits them consistently. He developed these friendships, these relationships. So does he do that to kind of put them out of their misery before he has fun, like Josh said?
I mean, the brothel boys did say that they were being protected by, something out there. And they mentioned in the last episode that they were wanting to fly away. So maybe they kind of in the midst of that time spent at the brothel, they're kind of like, pillow talk, like you're venting to someone. And then they're maybe taking the venting to a whole nother level. So that's
Well, and I think Chrysler implied, or more, I can't remember which one, that obviously maybe the strangulation happens during some sort of sexual act with the child, because he said that's what they do during, that
bondage and things like that. Yeah.
So,
I want to get on to our field trip, but before I do that, do you ladies have any last clues or anything that really stood out to you?
I was we still don't know what happened to John. They just kind of slipped that under the rug.
Yeah,
but,
in the book he's
I'll
not
tell
raped,
you.
but it seems like he is here,
Right.
and then
Poor
it seems
guy.
weird because he doesn't seem to care about it. And I'm
they
like,
just brush that on over.
No pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't find pants, and the captain or chief said, Captain Carter said he won't be walking for a week. Like, oh, don't do that.
Listen.
Right.
I'm like, this is
Madeline.
none of this is okay. This is not okay.
He was just trying to show face for Sarah. He didn't want to be
gosh.
embarrassed in front of Sarah.
Horrible.
probably not.
But that was the only thing that was on my shoulder.
Also, can we just briefly talk about how unhelpful Sally is? I love how they track Sally down in the alleyway and they're like, give us information or whatever. And Sally's like, I'm going to tell you nothing.
He's smart. He knows
yeah.
that he is being watched.
Right.
true.
He look, the live chat has just been amazing today. I want to thank everybody who's joining. But they definitely said early on that they feel like Sally's going to be the next victim.
Oh,
That makes sense.
That's what our
That makes
viewers
sense. Because
have
you
predicted.
If you're building a novel or a series, you want the person to care about the next victim. So
Right.
you introduce this character that people are going to care about, and then you murder them so they're more invested.
And Sally is so vulnerable. And
Yeah.
we mentioned, those are the type of victims that the killer goes for.
And then not to mention, he made that statement. They said, well, how do you know who to trust?
I just do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is setting him up to
Yeah.
be killed.
Gosh.
Please don't kill Sally, guys.
Okay, don't kill me, Steve, but I need to grab something. Talk amongst
Okay,
yourselves.
so there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is just another tidbit that we got in the episode. Someone said in passing to somebody else that they were angry because Roosevelt closed all the saloons on Sunday. And so I think that's
yeah,
going
he's
to
trying
be
to clean up the town and
right,
it's pissing people off.
right. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more moments of the regular folks in New York being mad at Roosevelt, and I think that might cause some additional scrutiny or problems for them if there's more murders.
Well, they're already plotting. The old captain or police chief or whoever he
chief.
was. He said that. Remember, they said that they were gonna, I think, slander his name with a false article
yes.
about him. So it makes sense. They want to get him out of the way because he's
Right.
trying to do the right thing, and of course they're
He's-
corrupt.
He's not going anywhere.
And now onto our field trip.
I'm sorry, field trip. Sorry, my notes about the field trip are in my bag, and I was like, I can't tell you anything because I don't have my notes. So Michael Kaplan designed the costumes. We have pictures on all of our social media, which you're going to follow so you can get a free book. That's right. Or have the chance to get a free book. I don't want to promise everyone a free book.
If you go to the Paley Center, you can.
Yeah, if you go to the Paley Center, you can also get a free book. he has nearly a 4-decade career. He had never done period costumes until now, and he talked about both in the video that they had at the Paley Center and in an article I read about how he did extensive research for this project.
Right.
And one of the most interesting things I found was that the Lego mutton sleeves that Sarah wears so often in this, they were famous for less than 10 years.
Right.
So they're so iconic to this time period, but it's very brief. It's like slap bracelets, guys.
Yes.
Only famous for 8 years.
They could come back. Yeah,
Everything.
it was really interesting because he talked about like really priding himself on not just assuming, oh, this is what it'll look like, and kind of think back and say, oh, that looks old. I mean, like, he really talked about how he had to embody that age. And Dakota said on one of her interviews that all of the buttons, all of the detail, like, they were real. She was like, you know, on some shows, some costumes, it looks like a button was really a snap, that sort of thing, but she talked about how she felt honored to wear that sort of detailed costume that took so long, took so much
and
thought.
they made them for the show instead of, you'll have costumes here and there being pulled from different
warehouses.
But they made, at least for all the main actors and some of the extras as well, they made their costumes.
Yeah, and one of the dresses that we got to see was actually the gown she wears at the dinner party in the last episode at Delmonico. So that was kind of neat to see that, since we just watched that episode, that beautiful green dress, for those of you that are caught up on all the episodes. But yeah, that was really cool.
That was our first time seeing her out of her work mode too. And it was like, you know, she had her moment of sass. So, you know, outside of the corporate America is what we would like to call it nowadays. It's like, you know, Friday after work type of dress.
Yes.
So that was really nice.
The other interesting thing I found from this article about Michael Kaplan was that he said he had the color palette for Moore was gray and blue, and then for Chrysler was black and dark green. And I feel like, and now that I've seen the costumes, I'm like, yeah, I really
that's
see
really
that.
nice.
And colors are important.
Oh yeah.
And
They
he
mean
also
certain
was the
things.
costume designer for the last Star Wars, I believe, Rogue One.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Both of the last two.
So if you guys like
Very
Star
nice.
Wars,
Nice.
he's also the designer for that.
Well, he had done like a lot of like, he did Flashdance, which I was like, oh my gosh, Flashdance. Great costumes, very iconic. The original Blade Runner, Fight Club, another iconic movie, and obviously Star Wars is iconic.
Yeah, well, he did
So-
an amazing job. I mean, the comments on Instagram, they're like blowing up talking about the detail in the costumes.
Love
in the
it.
posts,
And he said in this interview that he had wanted to do, he had read this book and he'd followed, basically had his agent follow the trajectory of the book rights because he wanted to do this particular project.
Wow.
So
Like, killed
this was like a labor of love for him.
Yeah,
That's cool.
the Paley Center, I think, is it will be there until. Did we get a date on
March,
that?
I think.
Until March. It's on my Instagram on my my page there, so you could probably find it. But it's free admission, so if you're local, go. It's amazing. They have a lot of other exhibits and things for Black History Month. But you can take a look at all of the costumes there. You can get a free book.
Yes. So if
And,
we run out, get your own.
You know, take lots of pictures and tag us in them. For sure.
Absolutely.
Was there anything you ladies wanted to say after like looking at the costumes and anything that it made you feel, or?
Their detail in the age, the shoes, and I posted it on my Instagram, but the shoe difference between Dr. Chrysler and John Moore, the shoes were really, really worn. You can tell that they took their time making the clothes look worn if they needed to be, and Dr. Chrysler's shoes were just perfect. And then the hat game. We kind of talked about this earlier.
A strong hat game.
It's a strong hat game, and I feel like
Yes.
this panel needs to really like embody that, but hat game strong for sure. You can always get down with a little hat game.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I wanted to say is just how of the times they were. You know, like I was talking to you guys earlier a little bit about how I have like some hats from my ancestors, and I also actually have a trunk full of some of their original dresses that they wore in the early 1900s from my great aunt.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
So,
really cool.
and they're just like the petticoats and the layers and the corsets and all these different things. I mean, the costumes that they made for this show are just pretty much spot on. So he did an amazing job. It was really cool to see.
nice.
A lot of the fans said, I saw a couple of comments that they wish that this style was still back in trend.
No, they don't. Not in a hot LA summer, they don't.
Not here. Maybe in New York. But, you know.
Well, they mentioned in the article that Dakota Fanning did have trouble at first because the corset was so tight and it was causing her to like not
breathe and pass out.
Yeah. So the corsets are not a blast. I've done a period theater where you're like on stage wearing a corset the whole time. It makes you sit a certain way, and
Right.
Great posture.
Get the great posture.
It's great posture, but at the
We
same
all
time, when you're
instantly.
done, you feel like she felt in that episode where you're like, get this off of me.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I want to add that here in the live chat, they agree. A lot of people agree that they love the costumes. Madeline, Jordan, John. So our viewers absolutely love the costumes too. So.
And I just want to do a little shout out to our follower of the fan of the week. Thank you. I was like at a loss for words there. And one of our commenters from last week, Luna, said on our YouTube that they thought that John has some severe psychological issues because his fiance left him, and so he was talking about, or she was talking about, just some of the inside of John's mind, and that he's really trying to relive a moment and trying to hurt himself almost with the intimacy that he has with the woman that he goes and sees, the prostitute.
Right.
And so he's continuing to beat himself up emotionally for something that happened in his past. So I thought that was a
Good
good.
comment,
That is
Luna.
a well thought
Great.
out
Fan of the week.
comment.
I want to give an honorable mention because Madeline, who is in our live chat right now, thank you, girlfriend. She got introduced and kissed and hugged by Luke Evans.
Oh, that's awesome.
Honorable mention.
I'm giving an honorable mention to my friend Omar, who also wrote on our iTunes. So don't forget to write on iTunes too.
Yes.
I'm 123 Jackie B. Where can the people find the rest
Yes,
of you?
you can find me on Instagram at Miss Candi Marie and on Twitter at Sweet Candor TV.
And you can find me at Alice L. Ford on Twitter and at Alice's Adventures on Earth on Instagram and Facebook.
And I'm Takira Shabrae. You can find me on Instagram and newly to Twitter at Takira_Shabrae.
Thank you for joining us. See you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.